I'm Maeve Connor, and I thought I understood my family's story. I didn't. It was full of silence, missing records, and choices no one explained. A few months ago, the past came back and tried to take from me what it couldn't take from my grandmother. I've been living in the house I inherited from my grandmother, Isabella Parker, for 2 years. It's a large, well-built place. 2 floors, a wide terrace, arched windows, and a balcony over the garden. Isabella didn't build it with her own hands. She earned the money to build it. After my grandfather's death, she worked, saved, hired builders, and replaced the small, worn cottage that used to stand here. She raised her only son, my father, Robert, alone. She never remarried and didn't complain. Before this house, there was a crooked old cottage on the same plot, drafty and unstable. After my grandfather died, Isabella focused on work and stability. Over several years, she saved enough, tore down the cottage, and commissioned this house. She kept the garden and a few trees. Everything else was new and solid. Neighbors still remember her as practical, strict with money, and reliable. My grandfather's name was Sean Connor. He died in Ireland when my father was only a few months old. The family story was simple. He went to Ireland to visit relatives and never came back. No body was returned. No clear paperwork ever reached Isabella. She moved on with what she could control: work, the house, and her son. When my father was in his 20s, he tried to verify what happened. He flew to Dublin with the details he had: name, approximate age, and the year of travel. He checked the General Register office for death records, visited several parishes to review burial books from that period, asked at the local civil registry, and looked through old newspapers on microfilm for death notices. He walked through cemeteries listed for those years. None of it led to a match. No grave under Sean Connor that fit, no obituary, no relatives found. After that, he stopped the search. There was nothing else to pursue. Isabella would not discuss Sean. She changed her surname from Connor to Parker shortly after he failed to return and kept it that way for the rest of her life. She didn't tell stories, didn't speculate, and didn't encourage questions. My father accepted that silence. So did I. The facts we could prove were few. Sean left for Ireland, my father was an infant, and he never came back. By the time I inherited the house, my parents had been living in London for more than a decade because of my father's work. I had built my career in the United States and chose to keep living here after the inheritance. That was the picture I lived with, a closed file. Isabella earned this house and kept our family stable. My father tried once to fill the gap and found nothing. We accepted the limits of what could be proven and moved on. I didn't expect that to change. That day I got home after work on a clear evening, planning to rewatch a favorite movie. An elderly woman stood near my gate, facing the house. She looked well put together at first glance: hair set, good shoes, an expensive coat. But the details didn't match. The coat was wrinkled, the blouse was creased, and the whole outfit looked like it had been worn too long. Her face showed fatigue, the kind that comes from recent problems rather than age. She called out first. "Do you live here?" "Yes, madam," I said, stopping a few steps away. "Can I help you?" "I am looking for Isabella Connor," she said. "She lived here 40 years ago, but now it's another house in this place." "She was my grandmother," I replied. "She passed away." The woman stared at me, then her eyes filled and she started to cry. "Oh, Bella, my poor Bella." "She had a happy life," I said, keeping my voice even. "Were you friends?" "Sisters," she said. "I'm Scarlett, her own sister." I froze. I had heard the name only once, in a short explanation. Scarlett disappeared many years ago. According to my grandmother, she left the family without saying goodbye and moved abroad. No letters, no calls, nothing. I chose my next question carefully. "Where have you been all this time? Why didn't you contact her?" "Long story," she said. She glanced past me at the house, then back. "I was waiting for you all day long. Do you have something for dinner?" There was no accusation in her tone, but there was no apology either, just expectation. I looked at her wrinkled coat again, then at the empty street. It was getting late. "Yes," I said. "Come in." I opened the gate and led her up the path. She moved slowly, taking in the front steps, the The new door, the windows. I unlocked the door and stepped aside for her to enter. She crossed the threshold and stood in the hallway, looking from one side to the other, saying nothing. I closed the door behind us. "I'll put something together," I said. "You can sit." "Thank you," she said. I guided her to the nearest chair. My hands were steady, but the feeling in my stomach wasn't. Letting a stranger in is one thing. Letting in the person my grandmother said had walked away from the family is another. I couldn't read her. She looked relieved to be inside, but there was a confidence in the way she carried herself that didn't match her tears. I kept my face neutral. Inside, a clear thought formed and didn't leave. Something here was not right. Inside, she moved through the rooms without asking, taking in corners and fixtures the way people do when they're checking more than decor. She ran a hand along the banister, paused in the living room, looked out over the terrace. "She built a great house," she said twice, like a conclusion. "She earned it," I answered. While I put water on the stove, I kept my questions basic: where she'd been, when she arrived, why there had been no letter or call. She never gave a direct answer. "I missed my town," she said. "The air here is different. You taste salt at night." When I pressed for where she'd lived, she said, "Many places," and let the words sit there. It was the middle of the night in London. Calling my parents would wake them, and I didn't even know what I'd be reporting. I told myself I'd call in the morning. As I cooked, she kept scanning. Door frames, locks, the cabinet where I keep documents. A thought I didn't like crossed my mind. Some groups send someone ahead to map houses. But then I'd catch a softness in her expression that reminded me of my grandmother, or maybe my father. That recognition wasn't proof, but it kept me from telling her to leave. I served pasta and tea. She ate steadily, like someone who needed the meal. Between bites, she talked about the old market 2 streets over, a teacher from school, buses that never came on time, local details that anyone who grew up here could recall. None of it explained 40 years of silence. After dishes, I suggested looking at family photos. I kept my tone casual. "We have albums," I said. "You might like to see the house over the years." Out loud, that was all. Inside, the test was simple. Real relatives recognize faces and places without fishing. I brought 2 older albums and a couple from the later years. In the eldest book, Isabella with neighbors, my father as a baby, the cottage, a summer fair. Pattern, almost no images of Scarlett. When she did appear, something had happened to the face. Creases over features, a scratch exactly where the eyes should be, a torn edge. It didn't look like age or damp. It looked deliberate. In one group photo, the figure beside Isabella had been cut out, leaving a white triangle. Scarlett watched my hands as I turned pages. "Where am I?" she asked evenly. "In here," I said, opening to a childhood page. 2 little girls, maybe 3 or 4, stood in identical dresses. The caption in Isabella's careful printing read, "Summer, Riverbank." The faces were clear. The jump from that image to the woman at my table was a long one. She studied the page for a few seconds. "We were small," she said. I turned more pages. "The cottage, the lane, neighbors," I said, naming what we both could see. She pointed to the cottage door. "We painted it blue. It chipped the same week." It was the kind of detail that could be a memory or a guess. I kept my expression neutral. We moved on to the newer albums, birthdays, holidays, graduations. The pattern held. No adult Scarlett. The few photos that might have placed her in a group were torn or creased at just the right spots. I tried to match the child's face to the woman across from me. It wasn't enough. "Isabella removed me," she said finally. No heat in it, just fact. "She didn't talk about you," I said. "Only that you left." She would say that. I closed one book and set it aside. "Do you have luggage?" "A suitcase at the bus stop," she said. "I'll bring it tomorrow." "You didn't bring it now?" "I wanted to be sure it was still her house," she said. "It is." I nodded. My list was unchanged. She knew local facts. She looked a little familiar. The albums proved nothing except that someone had been erased. I still had no confirmation of who she was. It was late. Scarlett looked at the clock and said, "It's time to sleep. I'm tired." "For how long are you staying?" I asked. "We'll see," she said. I didn't like the idea of leaving her in the house, but I wasn't going to send an elderly woman outside at night either. She hadn't asked if she could stay. She behaved as if staying was already settled. I kept my tone even. "You can use the guest room at the end of the hall." She nodded once, not thankful, just certain. I showed her the room, clean sheets, extra blanket on the chair, lamp on the nightstand. "Bathroom is across," I said. "Towels are in the cabinet." "Good night," she said and closed the door. I went to my bedroom, locked it, and sat on the edge of the bed with my phone in my hand. London was asleep. I set an early alarm to call my parents and placed the phone on the nightstand with the charger. I checked the time again, then got up and made a quiet round of the house. Front door locked, back door locked, windows latched. The kitchen light off, hall light on low, nothing unusual. Back in my room, I didn't change. I lay on top of the covers and listened. No footsteps, no water running, no doors. The house was silent in a way that made every small sound stand out. The hallway clock, a car passing far off, wind at the gutter. I waited for something from the guest room, a cough, a creak in the floorboards, anything. Nothing. Minutes stretched. I checked my phone again, then put it face down. I closed my eyes and opened them immediately. The quiet continued. I didn't sleep. I just listened to the house hold its breath until morning. At 5 a.m., I called my dad. It was morning in London. "Scarlett is here," I said. A pause. "Who is Scarlett?" "Your aunt." I didn't finish the sentence. The guest room door opened and Scarlett stepped into the hallway, already dressed. "Talking to Robert?" she asked, then spoke toward my phone without waiting. "Let me hear him, dear. I remember him as a 1-year-old boy." I put the call on speaker. "Robert," she said warmly, "you used to laugh in your sleep. Isabella said it meant good luck." Dad's voice shifted. "Scarlett? Is that you?" "It's me." They exchanged a few short lines. "How are you? When did you arrive? Are you well?" She stayed friendly but vague. She didn't say where she had been, with whom, or why she never contacted us. When Dad asked directly, she said, "Long story. We'll talk when I'm rested." After the call, I made breakfast. Scarlett watched the kettle, then the toaster, then me. "Whose name is on the house?" she asked. "Yours or Robert's?" "Mine," I said. "How long have you lived here?" 2 years. "You inherited it directly from Isabella? Not through Robert?" "Directly." "Perfect," she said, like she'd reached an internal conclusion. I texted my dad under the table. "Something's wrong. I don't think she's Scarlett." He replied a few minutes later, "I have no doubts. She remembered details no one else would. But be careful. We don't know where she's been or what she wants. I'll come in 3 days." The day was clear, so we went to the garden. Scarlett said she used to work in a garden and still knew how to prune roses and tie new growth. She moved slowly but with confidence, pointing out where to cut and where to leave the stems. When I asked where she had lived, she changed the subject to weather, soil, and the smell of the sea. I tried again later. She redirected to a story about a neighbor from back then without giving names or dates. In the afternoon, I brought water and sunscreen. She took the water, ignored the sunscreen, and asked to see the shed. She looked at tools, the lawnmower, and the storage bins, then said nothing useful. By evening, I showed her photos from my childhood and youth. There was one of my parents on a trip last year. Scarlett glanced at it and said, "Robert has the same silver at the temples that Sean had." "Granddad Sean?" I asked. "Yes," she said, and her face went distant like she was chasing a memory. "He died before 30, I said. "Did he have gray hair already?" Scarlett hesitated. Then she smiled lightly. "I mean another Sean." "You just said—" "I'm tired," she cut in. "I need to rest." She handed the photo album back, stood up, and walked inside without waiting for me. I watched her go, the same tight, unfinished feeling returning. She'd been warm with my father and sure of small details, but every time the facts pinned her down, she stepped aside. 3 days until Dad arrived. I hadn't slept in 24 hours, and I wasn't planning to sleep this night either. Our last conversation with Scarlett only added confusion. She stayed pleasant and vague, never explaining where she'd been or why she'd come now. I still couldn't be sure she was my grandmother Isabella's sister. I decided I wouldn't wait for my dad to arrive. I needed to push for answers in the morning. It was just after 10. I checked the house, front and back doors locked, windows latched, hall light on low. Then I took a large glass vase from the console table and carried it to the guest room. I set it directly behind Scarlett's door, centered so that even a careful opening would tip it. If she left the room at night, the crash would wake me. If she stayed put, nothing would happen. I stood in the hallway and listened. No movement. I went back to my room, locked my door, and set a single alarm for 5:30 a.m., early enough to remove the vase before Scarlett woke. If I did drift off, the alarm would make sure the test didn't turn into an accusation. Shoes off, I lay on top of the covers with the lamp off and the room dim from the hall light. I kept my eyes open and tried to listen past the house's usual sounds, the hallway clock, a soft draft at the window, a distant car. I waited for floorboards, a door hinge, water running. Nothing. Time moved slowly. 11:07, 11:28, 11:51. My eyes burned. I told myself to stay awake, just a few more minutes, then stand up and walk the hall again. I focused on the quiet like it was a task. Midnight came and went. The silence held. I adjusted the pillow, stared at the ceiling, and counted breaths to stop my mind from spiraling. The alarm on my phone was a small reassurance. Even if I slipped, I'd wake before she did, remove the vase, and no one would know I'd set it there. I blinked hard, once, twice. The room blurred at the edges. I kept listening for glass. At some point, without meaning to, I closed my eyes. I woke to the sound of breaking glass. Morning light was already in the hallway. I grabbed my phone. Alarm missed. The guest room door was open. Shards of the vase spread across the floor like ice. Scarlett stood a few steps away, watching me. "What's that?" she asked, voice flat and strict. "I moved it last night," I said. "I meant to put it somewhere else and must have forgotten it under your door." She held my eyes a second longer than was comfortable, then turned without a word and walked to the kitchen. I knelt and cleaned up the glass piece by piece into a dustpan. Guilt cut in faster than the edges. This was my house, but the trap felt ugly. I thought about apologizing and asking for a clear conversation. Where she'd been, why she came, what she wanted. If we were family, we needed facts, not games. I carried the trash to the bin and followed her to the kitchen. She had already put on the kettle and started the coffee machine. She didn't look at me. The quiet said more than anything. "Scarlett," I began. "About the vase?" She kept her back to me, measuring coffee, steady movements. She wasn't clumsy or shaken. She was offended. "I want to talk," I tried again. "I have doubts. I'd like you to tell me everything directly. If you are who you say you are." She set the spoon down, turned, and cut me off. "Sit and listen. If you don't want it in a good way, it will be in a bad." The tone snapped me upright. "You don't talk to me like that in my house." She didn't blink. "Are you sure it's yours?" I felt the floor tilt a little. 100%. She laughed once, short and amused, not friendly. Then she turned back to the counter, poured coffee into 2 mugs, and slid one across the table toward the empty chair. I didn't sit. "What is that supposed to mean?" "Sit," she repeated. "You set traps at night. I prefer daylight." I stayed standing another beat, then pulled out the chair and sat. She took the chair opposite, finally meeting my eyes. The kitchen felt smaller. "You want direct answers," she said. "So do I. But remember, you asked me in. You fed me. You kept me under your roof. That means, somewhere, you know who I am." "I know nothing for certain," I said. "Start talking." She wrapped her hands around her mug. "First, about this house," she said, almost casually. You say it's yours. Good. Then you should already know what belongs to Isabella, what belonged to Sean, and what was never hers to start with. I felt the first edge of what she was pointing at, and I didn't like it. Explain. She took a sip, watching me over the rim. Gladly, she said, since you prefer the bad way. She left the coffee on the table, crossed the room, and sat in Isabella's armchair like it was hers by right. Back straight, hands on the rests, full confidence, the posture of an owner, not a guest. You said Sean died, she began, eyes fixed on me. Yes, he did, but at 81, in the hands of his beloved woman. My mouth went dry. 81? In his own bed, she said as if she were reading a line from a record. Not lost in Ireland, not a boy who vanished, an old man who lived a long life. I couldn't get a sentence out. I stopped. Who was the beloved woman? She didn't blink. Me. Silence stretched. The refrigerator hummed. A car went by outside. None of it felt real. My grandmother told us he died when my father was a few months old, I said. We looked for records, we found nothing. Why would she say that if it wasn't true? Because Isabella was like that, Scarlett said. She was afraid to tell the truth, that her husband left her for her sister, so she lied to the boy and to the world. It's what she could control. Don't, I said. She lied to your father about his own father, Scarlett said, voice steady. All his life. How low. Did she ever marry again? I bet she didn't. She laughed, short, sharp. It landed wrong in the kitchen, too loud for the room. It scared me. Don't talk about my grandmother that way, I said. I could hear the heat in my voice and didn't pull it back. She carried the family alone. She built this life. She didn't deserve to be mocked in her own kitchen. I don't care about your grandmother, Scarlett said. If I did, I would not have spent a happy life with Sean. I sat on the sofa, elbows on my knees, staring at the floor. Tears gathered before I could stop them. The idea of my grandmother, quiet, precise, strict, carrying that kind of pain for decades without a word pressed against my throat. Scarlett watched, unmoved. So here is the truth, she said, like a clerk summarizing a file. I was married to your granddad Sean for almost 50 years, and now all his is mine, as well as this house. I let out a small, disbelieving sound. The house is mine. We'll see what a lawyer says, she replied. Once they find out another heir exists. Sean bought this land 60 years ago. It's his. Pack your things, Isabella. I'm Maeve, I said. She smiled without warmth. You have her eyes, the eyes of a victim. It will be easy to defeat you. I stood. We're going to slow this down. You set traps at doors, she said. You don't get to decide the pace now. I live here, I said. I do. I forced my voice to even. If you're claiming Sean bought this land, show proof. Dates, a deed, a purchase agreement. Anything with his name on it. What county? What year? Who sold it to him? Don't try to posture, she said. You're out of your depth. Then it should be easy for you, I said. What year did he buy it? 1965, she said quick. She left her coffee on the table, crossed the room, and sat down in Isabella's armchair with full confidence like she owned the place. She didn't ask. She didn't check with me. She just sat, straight-backed, hands on the armrests, eyes steady. You said Sean died, she began. Yes, he did, but at the age of 81 in the hands of his beloved woman. I stared at her. 81? The word came out flat. My brain stalled on the math, on the years that didn't fit. Who was the beloved woman? Me, she said. I didn't answer. The kitchen was quiet enough to hear the clock in the hall. Every version of the story I knew slid out from under me. Scarlett kept going. Isabella was always like this, afraid to tell the truth that her husband left her for her sister. She lied to her son all his life about his father. How low? She tilted her head. Did she ever marry again? I bet she didn't. She laughed, short, sharp. It landed like a slap. Don't talk about my grandmother that way, I said. My voice was tight. She raised my father alone and held this family together. I don't care about your grandmother, she said without changing tone. If I did, I wouldn't have spent a happy life with Sean. I sat on the sofa. I looked at the floor because looking at her made the room spin. My eyes stung. If what she was saying was true, my grandmother had carried that pain for a lifetime and never said a word. If it wasn't true, then I was listening to someone tear her down in her own house. Scarlett watched me, expression unreadable. So here's the truth, she said. I was married to your granddad Sean for almost 50 years, and now everything that was his is mine, as well as this house. I let out a small, disbelieving sound. The house is mine. We'll see what the lawyer says when they learn another heir exists, she shot back. Sean bought this land 60 years ago. It's his. Pack your things, Isabella. I'm Maeve, I said. She looked me over for a second. You have her eyes. Eyes of a victim. It will be easy to defeat you. I held her stare. Say whatever you want about me, I said. But don't say a word about Grandma. She didn't blink. You live in her house and repeat her lines. Same thing. I shook my head once. No, not the same. She leaned back in the chair like the discussion bored her. You heard me, she said. Sean lived. Sean loved me. Sean died in my arms. I was his wife for decades. What was his comes to me, including this ground under your feet. I didn't argue the rest. I stuck to the single point I could say out loud without adding anything she hadn't already brought into the room. The house is mine, I repeated. We'll see, she said again, as if the words settled everything. For a few seconds, no one spoke. I focused on breathing evenly. She rested one hand on the chair's worn fabric like she had settled into a familiar spot. I tried not to picture my grandmother in the same chair, quiet, careful, never saying any of this. Scarlett broke the silence first. You should start packing, she said, like she was giving practical advice. It will be easier for you. I didn't move. I'm not packing. She stood, slow and controlled, and smoothed her wrinkled coat. Victimize, she said almost to herself. Just like hers. I held my ground. I'm Maeve, I said again, steady. This is my house. She smiled without warmth. We'll see, she repeated, and turned her head toward the hallway as if the matter was finished. I stayed on the sofa, hands pressed together, breathing in and out until the sting behind my eyes faded. I didn't answer her last line. There was nothing to add that wasn't already on the table. Her claim, my refusal, and the one sentence that cut through everything she had said. The house is mine. That night I cried until my eyes hurt. I called my dad and told him everything. He didn't argue or ask for more proof. He just said, I'll take the first flight. He arrived the next afternoon. We hugged in the doorway like we hadn't in years. 3 days later, a letter arrived from a local firm, addressed to me and to my father. It was from Scarlett's lawyer, inviting us to a meeting to discuss property matters relating to the late Sean Connor. Our family lawyer, Mr. Hale, came with us. He'd already reviewed the title, the chain of documents, and the old police file. He laid it out clearly at the table. The deed and all subsequent filings were in Isabella Parker's name. Decades earlier, Isabella had filed a missing person report stating Sean left for Ireland and never returned. The report documented attempts to contact any relatives and the lack of response. On paper in the U.S., Sean was effectively treated as deceased for property purposes after prolonged absence and no contact. For Scarlett to claim anything now, she would need to prove Sean was alive long after the disappearance and that he retained ownership rights here, with official records. That would be difficult, lengthy, and expensive, in Mr. Hale's words. Scarlett sat opposite us, expression tight. Her lawyer listened as Mr. Hale spoke, then asked a few procedural questions. Mr. Hale answered each one calmly, with dates and document numbers. Finally, he said, Given the uncertainty and to avoid conflict, my clients are prepared to offer $5,000 in exchange for a signed release of any and all claims regarding this property, Scarlett snapped. She stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. 5,000? She turned on my father. Your father never loved you. He left you forever for me. This house must be mine. You offend me with such an offer." Her lawyer touched her sleeve and asked for a moment. They stepped into a side room. We heard raised voices, then crying, hers, I thought, muffled by the door. 30 minutes later, they returned. Scarlett's face was blotched, her voice was gone. Her lawyer spoke for her. "My client accepts the offer." Before the agreement was printed, Scarlett looked at us directly for the first time. "Maeve, Robert, please." Her voice shook. "Sean had debts. At the end, he was bankrupt. He died of a heart attack after we lost everything. I have nothing now. All my things are in one small suitcase. I'm 72. I have nowhere to go. You're the only close people I have left." No one answered. The assistant brought in the one-page release. Scarlett's lawyer slid it across. She signed with a trembling hand. Outside the building, the wind was cold. My father took out his checkbook, wrote a new number, tore the slip free, and handed it to Mr. Hale. 20,000, he said quietly. "Give it to her. Ask her not to contact us again. Tell her we wish her well, but we want no more visits, no more letters." Mr. Hale looked at the amount, then at my father. "Are you sure?" "Yes," Dad said. "We're not like them." Mr. Hale went back inside to deliver the check and instructions. We stood on the sidewalk saying nothing. In a few minutes, he rejoined us. "She took it," he said. "Her lawyer will arrange her transport. The release is final." On the drive home, my father kept his hands steady on the wheel. "I loved your grandmother," he said at last. "Whatever the truth is about Sean, she raised me. This house is hers, and now yours." I nodded. The knot in my chest loosened, not because everything made sense, but because the threat was over. The papers were signed. The house was safe. That night, I walked through each room with the lights low, hallway, living room, kitchen, the armchair she'd taken like a throne. I paused at the guest room door. The floor was clean where the vase had shattered. No trace of Scarlett remained. I turned off the last lamp and went to bed. For the first time in days, I slept. I don't know where Scarlett is or if she's safe. Sometimes I think about her, about the choices she made and the damage that followed. I don't feel revenge, just a simple rule. You live with what you choose. She chose her path. Now she faces the result. For me, the outcome is clear. The house is secure. The title is clean. The threats are over. I keep the rooms in order, the garden trimmed, the documents filed where they belong. This place means even more to me now. It isn't just where I live, it's the proof of my grandmother's strength. Work done, payments made, papers signed, a life held together without help. I respect that. I protect it. Whatever happened between the sisters belongs to the past. What I keep is the present. My name on the deed, my father at peace, and my grandmother's house standing, exactly as she intended.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and explore our channel for more love, betrayal, and redemption tales.